Hey guys, this is Those Guys with your host Matt Marrero along with their other host.
Anthony Sinandris.
And today we bumped Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze, to do Captain America 3. Good God, they just stopped numbering them. Captain America 3, Civil War. Which was a very hard choice, right, Anthony?
Oh, it was tough, it was really just tough to choose. Yeah, totally.
You sound so enthused. But no, here we are, right? We're doing Civil War, and my God, was this a really good film? And I know, we've only seen it once, and we just saw it a few hours ago. But I wanted to make sure to get, our immediate coverage so that we didn't forget any important details, like who Captain America was, but the important things, um, and why is Aunt May so young?
And
Well,
somewhat attractive.
um, yeah, I mean. Yeah, it's just she's very young. But so we're not going to talk about the movie in order like we usually do because I did not bring a notepad to the theater. I could have, but I did not. I didn't realize we'd be so alone in the theater. There was like no one there.
Yeah.
But yeah. So what I want to ask is, now that it has been a few hours, right? So you had some time to cool down. What are your thoughts on the movie? You still like it as much?
I still love it. There's one thing I thought of, though, that I'm kind of thinking it might just be me. Like, I may not fully
Oh,
grasp it.
before
But
you continue, I want to mention this will be a spoiler-filled podcast.
excellent.
Anyway.
It's like, so is it cool to address it now, or do you want to go into that later?
No. Again, we're not going to go in order because I don't have any notes in front of me and nor any summaries. So please just talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Alright, cool. So it is, I'm assuming most of the people listening know, or if you don't know, now you know, there's two after-credit sequences with this movie.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is about your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. One involves Bucky and Cap in the aftermath of what happens to them once they're in hiding.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the thing that I thought about, and it kind of bothers me a bit, is the fact that Bucky gets put back under ice, right?
Yes.
It seemed to me Cap was trying to prevent that or something worse from happening to him the entire movie. And the reason that bothers me is because I'm thinking back to one scene in particular where Captain America is talking to Stark. And Stark's idea of what to do with Bucky is just put him through some extensive therapy to try to work out what's left in his mind. That's the only thing that bothered me, is this entire fight was more or less Cap trying to get Bucky to a safe place, where in the end it ultimately ends with Bucky just going back under ice anyway.
Here's the thing. I think there's a chance that Captain America was worried that Stark wouldn't have lived up to his end of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
Or the fact that it doesn't matter what Tony Stark says, they're going to shoot him on sight.
That's true.
So I think maybe to him, safe place is under ice because it wasn't anywhere. It was Wakanda.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you, though. It does make sense that, it feels like he wants Bucky to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
Conscious, know? And then it just turns into, nah, we're good. We're putting you under.
That was the only thing that bothered me after I stopped, gushing over all, the fight sequences and how great the characters were written and everything. I was like, wait a second. This doesn't really work for me.
Yeah, I understand that. I feel as if, well, there were certain people, and I don't know what they were referring to, but people were saying, oh, there was a subplot that I think could have been cut. If it's referring to Baron Zemo, while it's frustrating because I don't want to say it should have been cut fully, but I'm also happy they went through, because I do think that having Tony's parents involved helped add a further wrinkle, especially with the Winter Soldier and everything. But I'm happier that it was addressed now, rather than been cut or done half. Because let's say because if it's not here, where else would it be, right? And if it's not cut and only half of it is done, then what? You're going to continue it in Infinity War or some other, like another Iron Man movie or something, or Spider-Man Homecoming? I don't. Like, as much as you can potentially have Zemo be a little tiny part or have a brief cameo reference in Spider-Man Homecoming, I kind of don't want that Spider-Man film to become completely about Captain America or Iron Man.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have cameos.
Oh, absolutely.
But I don't want it to be their movie. It's his movie. And speaking of, by the way, how'd you feel about Spider-Man?
I loved him. I wasn't sure how I'd like him because prior to, I had no problems at all with Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield was my favorite of the two because I thought he really got the humor of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I thought it was even better in this one. It wasn't, because in some moments with the Garfield, the jokes felt kind of forced, but with this one, everything just felt so natural. Like Tom Holland, the actor that played him, it just flowed perfectly with him.
Yes, I'll admit I haven't seen the second Garfield film, so I cannot comment on whether or not jokes in there sounded forced. I like the jokes in the first one, the Amazing Spider-Man.
No, the first one was great. It's the second one where it's like not the best.
Fair enough. I always felt like we haven't had the perfect Spider-Man, and while I don't think Tom Holland is perfect either, it's still about at 95%. Like, it's still very strong, and yes, we've only seen a bit of him written in a completely different movie by completely different writers. But, personally, I feel like, you had Tobey Maguire, right, who kind of looked the part of Spider-Man, right? Looked the part of Peter Parker. But as Spider-Man, there were no quips, which are kind of needed for Spider-Man's character. You flash to Andrew Garfield, Amazing Spider-Man looks nothing like what you would think Peter Parker would look like. Looks way too good, in my opinion. Right? Looks like he can really be a model. Now, I understand that they were going for lanky and tall and whatever, but I don't know. I've never heard someone go, man, that guy's too tall for me. You know? So, that was a bit of an issue. And then now we're here. And while his face, it's funny because, his body matches where they want him to be. But his face screamed that he's, 19? Isn't he? Yeah. It's pretty bad in that regard. Because, something about his face makes me feel like you can easily bulk up and be part of the football team. Another one who looks too, I guess, good. But at the same time, though, right? His build, where they want him to be in high school, his acting ability, right? All that stuff, the jokes and everything. I feel like as a Spider-Man, he's right now at 90-95. Where the other two were, in a way, 50-50. Because if you have to sit there and say, oh, you look like you're great Peter Parker, but you don't look the part of Spider-Man, well, that's 50% of the actual, story, or at least the character. Yeah. So I really enjoyed him. I definitely enjoyed their interactions. I mean, just some of the stuff that happened with him. Now, it's interesting how the trailer cut a lot of stuff in ways that didn't actually happen. And I mean this across the board. Very interesting manipulation in the trailer. More so than I think I've ever seen.
Oh, absolutely.
But if anyone doesn't know, Spider-Man is completely CGI. Which is so interesting because I don't think people caught on to it. But he's completely CGI. And what's interesting, not just the eyes, the whole thing. And what's interesting is they just erased him. Because he's CGI and he's technically not really in the shots, you can just erase him from them. So in the final battle scene where it's 6-on-6, it looks a little awkward, 5-on-6. What do you mean? There was no Spider-Man's there. So it is so interesting, I think, when you think of technology, that it's just Spider-Man was just chilling around, right? But we didn't know. We made it seem like there was a fight, and then Tony called him out as a last resort. Really, Tony called him out in the beginning of the fight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Also, speaking of Tony working with Spider-Man, you and I were a little, I think, flustered, I guess? Is that a good word? I hate using the word frustrated. So. Frustrated so much. Flustered, or at least a little disappointed at the fact that they didn't have any one of them, anyone on the other side, or even Tony's side, call him out on the fact that he used Spider-Man, a child, a teenager.
Exactly.
For his war.
Honestly, I was expecting it to come from Cap, because in the movie, as soon as Spider-Man steals Cap's shield and he's on the thing, Cap just looks at Tony and goes, well, you've been busy, and I was kind of expecting a follow-up, recruiting kind of young now, aren't you, Tony, or something like that.
Yeah, I'm assuming there's going to be some kind of director's cut, because there always is, but or some kind of deleted scene that maybe adds on to that. But, it's a little, disappointing, because I made the joke to you, when we were walking out of the theater. Well, Cap's hypocritical. I don't think he can talk about child soldiers. But Bucky wasn't a kid in the movie universe. In the current Marvel Cinematic Universe, Bucky was a man.
Yeah.
So really, he actually has the ability to call him out on that. Versus, a little bit in the comics where it's just You're working with children, Tony. Literally, Bucky just being his fucking Robin. It's like, well, maybe not. Um, but here, I think it worked out very well because while I'm happy that they took away a little bit of Tony's, I guess, complete evilness. Now, I know some will consider it I guess a watered down version, but I'm okay with it because you don't want to make Tony seem like a complete asshole, in my opinion. Like, it's okay to make people feel like they can go on both sides without one side seeming worse than the other. You know?
Yeah.
But the way that I feel about it though is while I'm okay with making people feel like they can choose either side, they didn't want to say like child soldiers in my opinion because they didn't want it to seem like Tony Stark is an evil dictator or something like that. Even though it's like, but guys, Tony did some pretty horrible shit. Like I know Thor isn't dead yet to bring him back to life, but if he had brought a villain back to life, like if he had brought Crossbones back to life, or had used had somehow used genetic engineering or something like that to try to get him, to work with them, that would have been some controversial shit.
Oh, absolutely.
Now again, I understand maybe not going that far, but he did use child soldiers anyway. Also, we don't really have Cap's full stance, at least as far as I remember, where in the comics it's like, oh, I don't want to do this because it's unconstitutional. Big government shouldn't be getting involved in our, like it was implied like, oh, I don't want the government to get involved, but not like a political stance. It just was kind of like, nah, not really. I know, like in a way it was, what was it, when War Machine, right, when Rhodey was talking to Falcon, just literally 127 countries, but you're like, nah, we're good. Speaking of Rhodey,
Yes.
did you also think he was gonna die?
Oh, absolutely. I did and I didn't. The only thing that stopped me from thinking he would die is I don't think they would have put that in the trailer if that were the case.
True.
I mean, either way, it is still kind of like a heart-stopping moment when you actually see it in the theaters.
Mm-hmm.
But just the fact that it was in the trailer kind of made me think they're not going to put that in the trailer and then kill him off anyway because people are going to just see that coming right out of the blue.
Here's the funny thing, though, right? I thought they would kill him because the thing is, seeing it coming, right? I saw it coming in the beginning, or I thought I did, because again, manipulation of the trailer makes it seem like Rhodey's death is what would have sparked this.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, to be fair, I'm not saying I wanted Spider-Man to be the one to do this, but I think it would have been nice if new heroes who are irresponsible, like, granted, I understand, in a way it's not painting the heroes, this movie didn't paint the heroes as bad so much, which is frustrating because they still went to war, but the heroes aren't the problem, the military is, or, the governments are, because they might have their own agendas, and, they're trying to get them to stop, even though it's like, hey, they're trying their hardest. The problem is that, in my opinion, Civil War was so meaningful and impactful because it was a bunch of people that, in my opinion, a decent amount of, I want to say comic book fans, but people that were reading Civil War may not have known about, or may not know about now. Those newer heroes that ended up blowing up a town, a full town.
Yeah.
And from that controversy, it's just like, whoa, should we be letting anyone? Because while there's been some new heroes, they've been doing it for a bit. Like, in my opinion, even though it's still, like, the movie flowed very well, if somehow Black Panther had been involved by accident, then it's like, oh, we just have these guys coming out of the woodwork here, Anyone can just put on a mask and blow up a building. But it was really just, no, not anyone. The Avengers, the ones that have been doing this for about 4 years now.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what's going on with their universe timeline, if it's like anything like ours, but clearly time passes through the movies,
Yeah, actually, I just checked. This film is set exactly 2 years after the events of The Winter Soldier.
Exactly. So clearly, time does go by. And although what's really funny is, even though time goes by, they only show the moments that we've seen in the movies. Because literally, Cap was like, "All right, that's enough. Don't show me anymore." And I look at you and I whisper, "I'm like, that's all you have. What? What else do you have to show? You showed every single clip from Avengers, Avengers 2. I think it was Civil War. No, it was Winter Soldier. It was like, guys,
Yeah.
you've shown everything."
Mm.
But yeah, so it wasn't a bad film at all. I know it seems like we're criticizing it a bit more. Um, but really, I mean, looking, and this I usually don't do, but comparing it to something like Batman v Superman, right?
Okay.
Because I hate comparing two films like this because, usually, in my opinion, it's like, no, they're different people, different messages. But in my opinion, they were both made to be similar because they came out around the same time. Hell, wasn't there a point that they were supposed to come out in the same weekend?
They were, yeah,
Yeah.
and I believe DC had pushed their movie up so that it wouldn't be competing with this.
Exactly. So, in my opinion, they're meant to be similar. I know, of course, like, no, but one's Batman v Superman. Yes, but with all of the cameos for potential future, well, not potential, for future Justice League members, clearly it was, meant to be an ensemble film more than just Batman v Superman. And also, it's not Superman 2. As we clarified, if anyone didn't know, it's not considered Superman 2. However, this is considered Captain America 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is just weird to me. No, because I think this would have been a good film to just say, "Hey, Chris, it's not actually Captain America 3. Leave the third for Bucky." I mean, I guess a 4 can just restart a trilogy with Bucky, because we
That's what
assume.
I was thinking, yeah,
Because we
like Bucky
assume.
would be the start of a new Captain America trilogy.
Yes. But anyway, before we talk about potential Captain America death, that didn't happen in this movie, by the way. Let's again mentioning Batman v Superman. So there was a lot of they were trying very hard, Batman v Superman, to make everything seem so cool and hip and dark and gritty. And here, in my opinion, Marvel didn't have to try. Everything just when shit hit the fan, it hit the fan.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they didn't have to sit here and say, like, "Oh man, you're so bloody, there's blood everywhere." Like, no, it's just like you see the aftermath of the fight, and you see Captain America, Iron Man, and Bucky, and they're basically dead. You look at their faces, and these guys are done. But I have a question for you. So I know I mentioned the subplot with Baron Zemo and everything, but how did you feel about Zemo the character? Do you think he was adapted well? Do you think they could have done something better? Or, I mean, hell, are you even happy that they kept him alive?
I'm very happy they kept him alive. That was one of my biggest criticisms of the Marvel Cinematic Universe on the whole, is that they tend to kill off a lot of villains right in their first appearance.
Mhm.
Obviously, they get to kill off Loki, but you can look at people like Malekith, arguably Ultron, they kind of left that one vague, and Red Skull as well was a little vague, but it kind of looks like he's gone. I'm glad they kept Zemo alive, because I feel like this movie was like pre-Zemo. Like, it's Zemo before he goes full-on crazy villain.
Right.
Because in this one, he wasn't even Baron Zemo. He was still just Helmet Zemo, rather. I have a feeling next movie we see him might be Infinity War. I'm not sure. But I definitely think there's going to be a lot to build on with him. And I think this was mainly the establishing groundwork for the character so that he can go full-on villain next movie.
If you didn't like his subplot in Civil War, you're gonna love it in Infinity War. Let's all fight Thanos. Nah, but Zemo. The movie. I think he might actually appear in a Captain America 4 situation. I think they might just save him for that.
Yeah, they would. I mean, if anything, it would be Captain America. Well, it wouldn't. I don't know if they call it Captain America 4, because I'm reading on the Wikipedia that Civil War is the last standalone Captain America movie, as far as Chris Evans goes.
Oh, okay, yes. Yes, no, we've heard about, and that's what's interesting, just as we mentioned a little bit before, will Chris Evans die? Oh, I'm sorry, will Captain America die? Chris Evans, you're going to stay fine for a very long time. You're good. You're good, Chris Evans. But will Captain America die, right? And when will he die? Because you would think, oh, it's because of Crossbones. Never mind. He went kabloom. So he died.
Speaking of that, how did you feel about them killing off Crossbones?
The fuck? Listen, here's my thing, right? You killed off a perfectly good villain that can be used later to fight in your Civil War.
Yeah.
Like, just anything to make Tony seem a bit more gray, but nothing too crazy. But even then, Spider-Man, I think, was crazy enough, and it just wasn't fucking mentioned.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I think it would have been nice, and also the fact that, in my opinion, I think it would have been great if Crossbones was the one that killed, you know, or at
Hmm.
least tried to help kill Captain America.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just not a big fan of them killing him off because yes, it seems like they've been vague about more heroes as of late
Hmm.
than they have been in the past. But I mean, you look at a lot of Iron Man villains that have just been taken. It's mostly Iron Man villains really that get killed, like
Yeah.
for certain. Um,
Hmm.
and I'm not a big fan of it. So now again, I'm not saying I want to leave things open ended. Like I understand maybe he becomes Zemo later, but that's a bit different in my opinion than the open endedness of having a Flash cameo the way that they did in Batman v Superman. Because on the side of fairness, you and I both complained, or at least I complained about Batman v Superman making plots that, well, don't worry, you'll find them out later in 2 years from now, right? You're gonna love this in 2 years, guys. Where with
Hmm.
Zemo, I don't feel like it was that plot at all because he was captured,
Yeah.
right? So even though it might be expanded upon later, in my opinion, it's a lot different than now if he wasn't captured and we didn't, get confirmation on who he was or the Tony Stark stuff, and
Hmm.
then in the next movie, whatever the next movie may be that Cap can be involved in or Tony can be involved in, he then appears and goes, "Remember 2 years ago? Now I
Oof.
will tell you." That would have been some shit,
Oh yeah.
bad shit. But this, I think, was done well in terms of it is its own story. It's its own
Hmm.
closed off story.
Yeah.
Question. Um,
Sure.
so yeah, I mentioned Zemo. You mentioned Crossbones. Um, how did you feel about the? Because we're still on Cap right now. Because I mean, fuck it. Apparently, it's his movie. How did you feel about the Captain American? No, the Captain America, Sharon Carter romance.
Um,
Okay, you too.
I
Good.
yeah. You know what my thing is? I
What?
don't think I would have minded it as much had Peggy's death not been in this movie, but in The Winter Soldier.
Okay.
I think it needed at least one movie of a break before they kiss, instead of having her kiss him. I'm assuming a few days or at least a week after her aunt's
Yeah,
death.
at
And
the end of the movie also is a feel good moment potentially.
yeah,
Um, the way I look at it too is that not just that, I think they're trying to retcon it where it's like, oh no, he was only he had a crush on Peggy that was unrequited. But in my opinion, early on in the series, it was made into like a nah, they could be a thing.
mm,
Like a real like shipping thing that isn't just like us as fans going, oh my god, will they, won't they? No, they could have if he didn't get trapped in ice. Now it's
yeah,
not like that's his granddaughter,
mm,
but I just gotta be honest, it'd be really awkward if you were with this girl or guy or trans person or whatever it may be, and you were with this person, and you're just like you go into the future somehow, right? And I guess it
mm,
technically is broken off because you're in the future now. Like
yeah,
clearly in the timeline, you've just stopped seeing them. You never called them back, and now you're like, oh wow, that's this person's granddaughter, or grand
mm,
something or other, and you're like, yeah, I want some of that. Like that's fucking
mm,
weird to me. That's because it's like I know that it's not like technically Cap isn't 100 years old, and to be fair, people have been behind Twilight shit. So like you know what I
mm,
mean? So like Edward Cullen situations. But I don't know, it feels weird to me because it's like you dated the woman that is now like her granddaughter is now the woman that you're dating. It just feels awkward to me because from the comics I don't remember too much of a Peggy Carter focus. Now mind you, I love the Peggy Carter focus overall. We need more of that, in cinema. And
yeah,
in television shows. Happy that we have Supergirl as well, despite what some people might say about the quality. We have some representation, and that's real nice. Um,
mm,
you know, but I just feel real weird about this quote unquote love story. That I'm not saying it needed more time. Heck, if this was the plot line that people were saying I think should have been cut, I would agree completely.
yeah,
If this is the, because again, people were saying there's a subplot that should have been cut. I don't know what it was, but if it was this one, fuck
mm,
yeah, this should have been cut.
Absolutely.
The only good part about this, subplot was the fact that we had both Falcon and Winter Soldier giving us a reaction gif for about the next maybe 20, 30 years.
Oh my god. The amount of times I've actually seen that GIF over the past few days is amazing, and I've been wondering what it was for.
That makes a lot more sense now, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, we should talk about Ant-Man.
Okay.
Now, I've seen bits and pieces of Ant-Man, right? We
Mm-hmm.
will, if we have to podcast on Ant-Man anytime soon, I will watch the full thing. There's nothing
Okay.
wrong with Ant-Man. I just had forgotten to fully take a look at it before this movie because, I just, have been so busy and everything, doing a lot of other stuff. So, me realizing, wait, no, I didn't get to see all of it. Oh, God. But the second they mentioned we have another guy, I was like, it's going to be him. Because, of course, the
Oh,
trailers,
yeah.
we knew he was going to show up. And man, did he deliver.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone delivered. Like, everyone brought their A game. And I think it was a really nice. I do admit, you could have had some, maybe more Paul Rudd or, a few, like, maybe some more Scarlett Johansson or even some more Jeremy Renner.
Yes.
Yes. Who was Hawkeye. I still think that it was a nice ensemble cast and it gave everyone, a voice.
Oh, absolutely.
But anyway, so great stuff from Ant-Man or Giant Man.
That was one of my top 5 moments for this movie, without a doubt. A lot of them were actually Ant-Man. I mean, I love when he went Giant Man. I love when he handed Cap what looked like a toy truck. And he pulls out the disc and he goes, throw it at this. It explodes. I really thought it was a water truck. I'm so sorry.
And just so frustrating, like, no, why would you think that? But yeah, no, I really enjoyed a lot of his stuff, and I think he really stole the show. And what's interesting is that Paul Rudd is, as a human being, not as Ant-Man. Paul Rudd said, "Oh, it feels crazy because all these guys are the superheroes, and I'm coming late into the game." And it's amazing how that really did transfer into his performance
Oh, absolutely.
as the character, because it's really accurate. Like Paul Rudd is the new guy, but the new guy who also kind of jokes a bit like Spider-Man does, like Spider-Man, but not completely. So in a way, it's just kind of like, hey, I'm new to this whole thing, and you are the Captain America.
I was about to say one of my favorite lines in the whole movie from him is when he goes, I know you know a lot of super people, so thanks for thanking of me.
And everyone's just like, oh God, this guy. Or I loved later on, I think, when it was just like, here you go, Captain America.
Yes. He
Just
just
like,
stands on the shield. I think this belongs to you, Captain America.
like,
Jesus.
it was just like, dude, you could say Captain, you can say Sir. I love it. Just Captain America. Like, I don't sit there and I'm like, I think this belongs to you, Anthony St. Andres. Like, you don't fucking do that. So he was, he was definitely, I think, a breakout star in this film. Maybe people didn't think that he would deliver and he would be as funny. And his Giant Man stuff was great, I think. Not only because of how it influenced everyone else, not just in the fight, but just the idea of, Tony Stark saying, so anyone on our side have any superpowers or secret abilities that they're hiding?
Not only that, it also brought up one of my favorite jokes now from the movie.
Yes.
When Spider-Man casually goes, anybody ever see that really old movie Empire Strikes Back? And I was like, oh my god. As soon as he said, I'm like, they're going to do the AT-AT attack. They're going to do it.
And what's
Sure
even
enough.
funnier is that was it? Yeah, it was Rhodes because, Rhodes was working with Tony. Rhodes immediately just says, how old is this kid, Tony?
And Tony's just like, I didn't really do a background check. I just know you can do this kind of stuff.
Yeah. But we mentioned Spider-Man earlier, but we didn't really mention the plot behind him. Before we move on to Black Panther, I want to mention the plot behind Spider-Man / Tom Holland. As if it's not Peter Parker, just Tom Holland is Spider-Man on the weekends. 6 months he's been Spider-Man. I think that's pretty cool. Like saying, hey, he's been doing this for a bit. Maybe Spider-Man Homecoming has a scene of him being sad about Uncle Ben, But I'm happy that they're not just sitting around discussing Uncle Ben. And in a way, it's not like Aunt May has moved on, but she doesn't seem to just be this grieving widow at this point. You know, it's not her movie to be the grieving widow. It's her movie to be like, oh my God, this is Tony Stark. I see him on television. You know, and of course, Peter just it was beautiful. Just well, I didn't tell you about the fact that I was that I had
Applying to
registered for
the
this.
Summers grant because I thought you like surprises.
Yeah,
So.
and it's great. He's like, I don't remember this at all. Because I actually thought that he and Tony Stark have been potentially talking, not just him scouting the kid, because that made sense. But I thought they might have been potentially speaking, and Homecoming would have been not an aftermath, but in like a prequel. Not including Uncle Ben, but just including the idea that like, hey, so I'm looking at this kid, right? Hey kid, let's talk. But no, it was just a complete. Excuse me. It was just a complete. Hey, I don't know you. You totally know me. Let's fight people together. You know? Yeah. I would like there to be some potential flashbacks though to this movie in Homecoming because there definitely were a lot of training montages and I guess costume making montages that did not exist. That I think would have been nice if they existed, but of course would have slowed down the plot. There's no potted plant. Like this isn't. There's Groot isn't here. There's no Groot. It definitely would have slowed down the plot if we had a scene where it's just like him just training, Peter Parker. But so I have a question for you.
Sure.
So do you think that the Spider-Man suit being CGI is in universe? Like Tony Stark is just so good at what he's doing that he just made a CGI suit for Spider-Man. He's just fighting remotely the entire time. He's not even there. He's basically Vision.
Jeez. I mean, in all seriousness, though, I think them having it be a CGI suit completely was genius. I think it makes it more dynamic. I mean, because when you have the actual actor in the suit, you do have to be a bit more careful and limited. And half of the stunts are going to end up being CGI anyway. So I think just going full-on CGI with motion capture was a great way to go. And I think they definitely nailed it because I had even told you in the theater, I was like, it's all CGI, and you didn't even know. You thought it was legitimately just him in the suit.
Yeah, I remember hearing it a while ago, but I had forgotten because in my head it's just, no, he is not CGI. His eyes are. And it's like, no, Matt. It's all CGI. Which is nuts to me because that's how good we're getting here.
Yeah.
For anyone trying to say, like, CGI looks so fake, it's just like, I'm sorry to tell you this, but, like, this movie, at any point that this movie had CGI that I thought didn't look as good or looked a little bit off, they made it so quick and they cut it out real fast.
Yeah.
Right? To make sure, like, oh, it's a quick cut. We're not going to focus on the fact that this looks terrible. Right? But here, I think it was just done so well because none of Spider-Man's... No, I'm sorry. Maybe, like, one of Spider-Man's things, I was like, okay, good, that was a quick cut. But most of Spider-Man's stuff did not seem terrible to me in terms of its CGI quality. Hell, just him walking around was CGI.
Yeah.
Technically. It's nuts. Every little thing that he did, he was not in the room with anyone. Which, I mean, must have hurt the kid, because it's his first fucking movie.
Oh, no, he was in the same room. But, again, they just had him wearing the motion capture suit. So if you, for example, like the lineup, when they were all just standing there, like, facing off against each team, as they were walking towards them, Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson was in her suit, Rhodey and Stark were halfway armored up, and the rest of it was motion capture. And then Tom Holland's walking there with him, but in a completely motion capture suit. So everything that's being done, he's actually doing it. They're just layering the CGI over his performance, but he's in the same room as all.
Okay, I didn't realize that because I thought they may have actually been in like a hangar bay.
No.
At any point were they in a fucking bay? A hangar bay or no?
There were a few sequences of the airport fight, because from what I've read and from what I've seen, the airport fight was shot, the whole fight was shot over about, I think, 2 or 3 months.
Right.
Broken up into little segments. Some were in an actual, like, open field, some were in little hangars, some were in sound stages. It was all just shot in different places, all put together.
That's beautiful. But, like, I just really enjoy that so much, just the, movie-making process of just like, hey, it took 3 months to film this. You saw it in like 20 minutes. And of course, I don't know about you, but I was just sitting there going, wow, the entire
I
fucking time.
I absolutely love that entire fight scene.
Yes, I do think it should have came at the end though.
Mm-hmm.
I think that by having it happen so early, right? You have
Mm-hmm.
not like super duper early, but it felt like the end of the film, like the climactic scene. I mean, that's how the trailers made it seem, and really, that's how Civil War was. You know, there may have been a little bit of stuff going on afterwards. You know, just kind of like to wrap things up, but there wasn't. Like, it wasn't wrapping things up. It was wrapping up a full other subplot that you definitely forgot about because
Mm-hmm.
superheroes were beating the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, in a movie called Civil War, was the plot.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't like it was like Civil War. No, it's actually called Captain America, Tony's dad, though. Like, you know, Captain America, Tony's parents, though. No, it was Captain America Civil War. But anyway, moving on to Black Panther. Finally, right?
Okay.
What is your opinion on Black Panther in this
I
movie?
Here's the thing. Before this movie, I didn't know too much about the character. I knew the basic gist of him, where he's from, his role in the Marvel Universe.
Mm-hmm.
After seeing this movie, I want to read everything about him that I can get my hands on. I, off the top of my head, cannot get the actor's name, but I think he did a phenomenal job with the character.
Mm-hmm.
I told you this in the movie because for people, like, basically, I'm into art. I like to draw things. I love designing things. I cannot stop gushing over the design of this Black Panther suit. I thought he nailed the character, the accent, and the fight choreography they came up with for Panther was absolutely incredible. As much as I love this new Spider-Man, of the newcomers in this movie, I think Black Panther is easily my favorite.
So here's something interesting, right? Well, no, we'll get to that in a second. Sorry, let me just take the Black Panther for right now because we're here, right? We don't want to put him to the side because, frankly, I think Black Panther. Like, okay, when I said that, when I said that Paul Rudd stole the show, right? He's still part of the universe, though. He's been part of the universe for a while. When you look at Black Panther, I think that he stole it in a way where while Spider Man was great, right? Love me some Spider Man a lot. I think that Black Panther just fit in so fucking well that he just seemed like he's been in every movie already. And it was so interesting because I didn't sit here and think, oh yeah, this Black Panther guy, he's just strolling in here. Who does he think he is? No, he just commanded power and he has this presence about him, the actor, that I think
Absolutely.
really is like a prince, and in this case, now a king, as his father had died. And it made sense, And to be fair, I know it was a joke of ours in the theater, but I'm being dead honest, right? His turn to the side of good, because technically he was evil, if you will, trying to, evil in the sense that going for revenge over anything else.
Yeah.
Him doing that, and then at the end telling Zemo, no, you know, revenge should not consume you, and it will not consume me any longer. And him even saving Zemo, right? We've been making these jokes like, oh, hashtag better than Pa Kent, when someone gives a motivational speech, right? In this case, hashtag better than Batfleck. Because look, all right, I liked Ben Affleck as Batman. I did. But just the way he turned via Superman's death, it just felt like, I understand like his points or whatever, but it felt like, it's kind of like you shouldn't have been branding people anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like in theory, right? I believe Panther had not killed anyone. He had only went after the one guy being, of course, Bucky.
Bucky.
Yeah. And then having to turn that over to Zemo and then saying, you know what, no, I won't do it. With Batman, it was more, oh, I've changed my mind now. I mean, I've killed hundreds, maybe even thousands, just by proxy. But not anymore. It's kind of like, well, I'm happy that you've changed, but you should kind of be held accountable.
Seriously.
Yeah. Also, in this, it means more, because someone might say, oh, well, he didn't kill, so it doesn't really mean as much in regards to Black Panther. You could try to argue that, but I'll say this much. Someone didn't need to die for him to have to change his mind. He just sat there. He heard about that guy's problems, and he realized, man, we're all somewhat the same, right? No one had to scream Martha. I was considering. I was like, I was like, what's Captain America's mom's name?
Wasn't there one point too? I don't remember in the movie where we literally looked at each other and were like, Martha.
No, it was right when Tony was like, I don't care, he killed my mom. As if his dad
That's
doesn't
it.
give a shit about his mom. He doesn't give a shit about his dad. He only cares about his mom. So he's like, he killed my mom. And then he's just fighting Cap one-on-one, and I'm like, if you literally have Cap go, Martha. I swear to fucking God. By the way, so I want to mention something for a split second. Guess how much the budget was for... Well, you remember the budget for Batman v Superman, right? It was $250 million.
Yes.
Guess how much the budget was for the Captain America Civil War film?
$250 million.
Correct. Do you have it up?
Yes. Absolutely.
Fucking hell. You should have just told me you had it up. You don't play games with me.
But start a Civil War, man?
Yeah, we can try. The problem is that we both agree. Like, we're both on the same side. Civil War agreement. All right, we'll sign the treaty. Like, it's just... but anyway, yeah, both had the same budget. And some might say, oh no, but you have Ben Affleck, so that's a lot of money you gotta pay out, so that's why they didn't have enough money for the cool special effects. This movie had Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
Do you know how much money gets funneled into that man? A lot of money. You know, like, enough money that I hope they even gave Paul Rudd food. Like, please feed your Paul Rudd. He's so good at his job. Keep him well fed.
I'm so glad you made that joke, because if anybody watches the behind-the-scenes stuff, they would honestly joke about that all the time we're on set.
Really?
Everybody had a small little trailer. Paul Rudd said he had a humble little tent, and Robert Downey Jr. had a 5-trailer estate.
I didn't know that. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's beautiful. But I'm being serious. Like, I feel like they may have paid Tom Holland more than Paul Rudd. Like, just please, pay your Paul Rudds. At least keep them fed and give them shelter. Don't neuter them, though. But please, don't get your Paul Rudds neutered. No, but seriously, though, right? All that money went into Robert Downey Jr. to make him feel, like he's a star. Even though it's Chris Evans' movie. Still, Captain America, everyone. But still, right? That happens. And yet still they have enough money to make some really good-looking effects, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
Compared to Batman v Superman, where it felt like they were trying so fucking hard to cut corners.
Absolutely.
In terms of what the fights would look like, what would happen in the fights, any cohesion, where I admit, yes, there was some, people worked together in Batman v Superman. But in this movie, it felt like it was done a lot, better, and there were a lot more effects into it. Like, it wasn't just, I'm going to throw the shield. And even then, the shield isn't real.
Yeah.
That's more money throwing a shield. Having things bounce off of a shield is more money. Having people bounce off of shields. Having Ant-Man in fucking general. Having him become Giant Man. Having him destroy, looking at all the things that they did, right? Now, I'm not saying that there wasn't destruction in Batman v Superman. Of course there was. There was wanton destruction. A lot went into that movie. But in terms of the fight scenes, though, I think this movie being Civil War just took the cake. And I really don't think that Justice League will do any better. Now, granted, I'm not calling it out immediately. I mean, we don't even have a fucking trailer for this movie. Who the fuck am I? But just the idea that I don't see them having that same kind of cohesion. Like, oh, we're going to bounce off of each other and do these cool moves, and oh, we're going to fight this guy and that guy. Like, no, I just feel like it's going to be a lot more of, like, half-assed special effects. Cutting from one guy to another, and then having to do random other subplots or, things to slide away from the action, just so that you can make sure that we save some money. And I understand if someone says, oh, but they cut away to T'Challa. They cut away to him when he was talking to Zemo. It's like, yes, but that's a lot different than taking Superman out of a fight to save Lois Lane.
Yeah.
That really cuts into the whole, hey, big fight feel. If your guy can take a water break. Now I know it wasn't really a break. He was looking for a weapon, but still, it It didn't sit well with me compared to this movie where I don't feel like they tried to cut corners, in my opinion.
Oh, no,
At
not at
least,
all.
at least on screen. I don't know anything behind the scenes. I don't know how well lit Paul Rudd's tent was, but I can assure you that, you know, on screen, if you haven't seen it yet, and for some reason you want to be spoiled, and that's cool for you, you should definitely go see this film.
Definitely.
Yes. So, right, this is Chris Evans' last film. I believe you wanted to
Mhm.
mention that on the show. You confirmed it because you saw it. You know, we
Well,
took
his last standalone film.
his last standalone film, correct? Because it would have been his last film overall, but he actually signed a deal only for 2 more films, and those 2 more are Infinity War Part 1 and Part 2.
Mhm.
It would be so funny if he was only signed on for 1 and they only kept him in Part 2. Not even like he dies in Part 1 and everyone gets sad but has to continue the fight. No, he's just in Part 2.
Mhm.
Like, wow, Captain America, where were you? Mind your own goddamn business. Thanks,
And
Cap.
watch your language.
Yeah. Also, watch my language. Watch my language and read my lips. Like, literally just starts. Anyway, but yeah, I definitely think that, mentioning Black Panther again, just briefly, he he really fit in so well
Mhm.
that it is astounding that this is his first Marvel film.
Yeah.
You know. Also, speaking of the Black Panther film, 95% of the cast will be African American,
Yeah.
which makes me really happy because if anyone is like sitting there going, "Well, why?" Well, I'll raise you a fucking Wakanda, right? Like, I'm so sorry that we can't cast Tilda Swinton as everyone in Wakanda. I'm so sorry. Um, let's not talk about that right now. We don't have enough time. Um, but when it comes to Black Panther, really happy with his the actor's performance. Oh, whose performance that I was very underwhelmed by was I believe it's Martin Freeman.
Yeah.
Yes, Martin Freeman, who I know from Sherlock, as well as a random appearance in Shaun of the Dead that I really enjoyed. Also, the British version of The Office.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of good roles, but I think he fell into the trap of someone who's not from America
Mhm.
trying to do an American accent and having it sound a bit too regionless. And
Definitely.
because of that, either he has to talk fast because he can't get his point. Because if he talks slower, then you start to hear the British kind of enunciations. Um, and overall, I just wasn't really a big fan of most of his appearances in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, how did you feel about him?
I was expecting more because I know prior to the film's release, I don't believe they said who he was going to play, and if they did, they didn't give too much. So in my own mind, I was expecting him to be kind of like a Zemo in a way, where he wasn't really a good guy. It was going to be like revealed in some twist that he was helping Zemo or at some point or something. So
Yeah.
I do feel like he was a bit underused on the whole.
Well, you know that he's going to be appearing in the Black Panther film.
Did not know that. Okay.
Yes,
There we
no,
go.
yes. This was a precursor, but again, not in a way that I think hurts his story because he had no story.
Yeah.
To have him work more with, I assume he'd be working with, because I believe he is a character in the Black Panther universe.
I think so.
Yes, from what I've heard. So he's definitely going to appear more in the Black Panther film. Yeah, so this was just kind of a way to say, hey, this guy exists in our universe, and then he'll show up in Black Panther. I don't know how many movies he signed on for. I can't see why he'd be signed on for 9. But to be fair, he is a big government official of some kind.
Yeah.
So I can see why he would be in 9 films, in the same way that Samuel L. Jackson was. Now, question, they didn't want Nick Fury in this film. But Samuel L. Jackson still has a contract for the movies, right? Like, he's not gone
Yes.
forever.
No, he's coming back. I think he has 3 more or 2 more left.
Well, I assume they're going to save at least 2 of those for Infinity War Part 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because, yeah, it's interesting because I understand why he wouldn't be here. Not only because you'd be ruining one of those appearances, like you'd be, because again, it's just by contract. So immediately you're like, crap, we only have X amount left. Also, I don't think he would have played such a big part because what would he have done? This had nothing to do with Shield. Strangely enough, they wanted to kind of take it away from it being about Shield and just being about a general government entity, as if Shield doesn't really do anything. Which was sad because someone who I did want to see is Maria Hill.
Yeah.
I think seeing her, because that iconic scene where Cap jumps out of the helicarrier is, frankly, iconic.
Yeah.
And the fact that we didn't have something as dramatic and, I don't want to say silly because I love it to death, but I guess silly, thinking about it in real life with, like, Chris Evans going, "No, you," and then just jumping out of a window. I really would have preferred something like that. But sadly, the only time that we had Cap truly against the government, again, to try and make him seem, I think, a bit, not watered down, but a bit calmer in terms of character, was when he went up against, the guys that were trying to hurt Bucky.
Yeah.
A more noble sense instead of just, no, I can't let big government do this. I won't let S.H.I.E.L.D. do this. And then going up against S.H.I.E.L.D. of all people. How did you feel about Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch?
I thought she did a great job. I think she definitely expanded a lot from how she was in Age of Ultron. I know some people had known this prior. I didn't realize that it was actually her that causes the explosion that kind of furthers the Sokovia Accords. I had no idea, and I thought that was actually a really genius choice. I like the little chemistry she has with Vision.
Mm-hmm.
I love that on the whole. I have a weird feeling come Infinity War, she's not going to be on the Avengers side.
I find that interesting. I can see why. I do think that I was actually scared by her performance in this film because, or at least the situations they put her in. Because when you had her sitting in that cell, I was like, holy fucking shit, we are setting up a Scarlet Witch, my babies situation. And shit's gonna get real somewhere down the line. Sadly, though, we can't make it get real before Infinity War because it has to be this, complete trilogy of, Loki, Ultron, and, Thanos. So we can't really have her because if there is going to be a Scarlet Witch movie like that, it's going to have to invade someone else's movie the same way Civil War invaded the Captain America franchise.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know whose movie would invade because, we have a new Thor coming out that includes Hulk. As you know, I believe I mentioned this to you on the air, we're not going, or at least in private, we're not going to get a new Hulk movie probably nearly ever.
Yeah.
And if anyone doesn't know why, I think I mentioned on the show before, something that I didn't know until recently. Here's the things that we do know, right? We know, we all should know at least, that at one point, Marvel was looking to sell all of their movie rights to escape bankruptcy. And that's why franchises like X-Men, including Deadpool technically, but franchises like X-Men, Fantastic Four, and Spider-Man, and many more aren't or weren't in their possession. Stuff like Daredevil, Punisher, Ghost Rider, those are kind of new to coming, they came back to them, even Blade, right, have come back to them, but they were with other companies that were making films based on them. That's why even like with the Marvel logo, let's say for Deadpool, it's not a Marvel film.
Yeah.
They have to put that logo, but it's not a Marvel film. So in other words, if you don't like, let's say, X-Men, the Apocalypse, that's all it is. It's no, because in my head, Days of Future Apocalypse. I don't think that's right, Matt. But if you don't like X-Men Apocalypse, don't blame Marvel for it. That's on Fox.
Yeah.
Right? Anyway, the point is that when it comes to, so those films were over there, other places, right? But when it came to Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, and Hulk, while the movies stayed with Marvel, they weren't big enough yet to distribute them. Distribute being like on DVD, on their own. So different companies were distributing these heroes. Up until, I believe, Iron Man 2, which is around the time when Disney bought Marvel. And then Disney started going to companies like Paramount, who were distributing Iron Man and said, "Look, we're gonna buy you out. Like we're gonna buy your share. So here's some money. Go away. Right? We're going to do this now." However, for Hulk, right, the first movie with Hulk, not in 2003, of course, because that isn't part of the new Marvel universe. The one in 2008, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yes, with Norton. That movie was distributed by Universal. And Universal, being as huge as they are, when Disney had said, "Hey, we'll give you some money so you don't have to do this whole distribution thing," they were like, "Nah, Disney, we're good. We can continue to distribute it. It's fine. You'll just make them, and then we'll make a bit of a profit off of promoting them." And since they're playing hardball, from the looks of it, Disney's also playing some hardball, and they're not making Hulk movies. However, they can include Hulk because he's a Marvel character anywhere. So if they didn't want to do the Ragnarok thing that looks like they're doing, where there's a potential that it looks like Hulk and Thor are going to be in their own movie, it's going to be a Thor movie, Thor 3, but Hulk will be in there. If they didn't want to do that, Thor and Hulk could have been in this one. Right? But yeah, I'm happy they weren't, though, because that's definitely some money saved CGI-wise to put elsewhere.
Oh, definitely.
But anyway, but when it comes to the two of them, yeah, so you can include Hulk anywhere, but it can't be the Incredible Hulk movie or a Planet Hulk movie. That's really what's stopping movies like that from coming out. Not, we made a joke a lot about the whole like CGI budget because it kind of feels accurate, but it's not just because of that, right? It's because of the fact that, and not just because the 2009 film didn't do well, or as well as they wanted it to. Because even if the film did well, I think that they feel weird about having to share profits with Universal. So even if Hulk was as big of a hit as Iron Man, I feel like they wouldn't be putting out more movies because they'd have to be sharing the profits with Universal.
Definitely.
Yeah. Anyway, so, but the point is, I don't remember what my point was. The point is that I enjoyed this movie, and if you don't enjoy this movie, I don't think you're really American. No, why the fuck does nationalism matter right now? Sure, it's a Captain America movie, but other than that, I really enjoyed Elizabeth Olsen's part in this, right? And what's funny is, in the last film, right, every once in a while, I'd see a little, a little hint of, oh, that's right, you're related to the Olsen twins, right? This movie was, full on, if you forgot, she's related to the Olsen twins. The resemblance is uncanny at this point, and it's awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm sitting there, and I'm like, one of them can probably switch with her. And if they gained a little bit of weight or put on a little bit of makeup, I think it'd work just fine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I love her plot with her and Vision. I love that whole romance. It happens in the comics, and I'd be happy to see it here. The two of them seem sweet together. It's nice to see Vision kind of break out of this shell and start to actually realize that he can feel.
Oh, yeah. And I love, I caught it immediately that she calls him Viz for, the whole movie.
Yes. It's nice, there's a nice kinship going on there. I'm just really scared about what's going to happen in the future because, good God, we know what happens in comic book land, and, by the way they've been treating her. Yes, a lot of people were in jail at the end of the film, but her specifically, the scenes with her, they were trying to make you remember, hey, she was, in a prison before the second Avengers film. And heck, her parents died, all this crazy shit that's happened in her life. This is not going to work well for her in the future with her powers. So my question is this, though. About the future. Not that we're at the end already, but I do have a question about the future that I would like you to discuss with me. So, of course, we're adding new Avengers into the universe, right? We have Black Panther and Spider-Man in this film. And I assume Spider-Man is not going away anytime soon, even though Sony still does own the franchise. Let's remember that. Of the live-action franchise. The rights, anyway. So, we have Spider-Man. We have Black Panther. We will be losing Captain America in some form or another. But technically, Bucky isn't exactly an Avenger, so I guess he's going to slide into, the Captain America role.
Yeah.
That's still technically losing a body, though. My point is, where do you think we're actually going to have a universe where, Tony Stark will be, not dead, but he'll be gone, so we won't really see Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. And we'll just have all of these open slots. You know, where we'll end up having after Infinity War a 4 to 5 Avenger setup again.
I'm not sure. I mean, one of the ideas I did have that I think they could potentially work with, but it would take a bit to kind of figure out exactly how to do it, would be in the comics the way they have the East Coast and West Coast Avengers, and have certain movies focus on like the East Coast, certain movies focus on the West Coast Avengers. That way, like you kind of balance it out. As far as Stark in particular, the way they could probably make that work is, let's say he signs on for maybe like one more movie or two with Robert Downey Jr. Film his stuff, have that be the movie, then allude to him doing something else with the East Coast or West Coast or whichever in another movie where it focuses on the opposite team.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That made a lot more sense mentally, but yeah.
Okay, no, I understand your point. Just the idea that, because from if anyone doesn't understand, your point about him coming back, there is talk of him coming back as Iron Man.
Yeah.
Even though his Iron Man roles are spent.
Mm-hmm. Because right now, we're definitely going to be seeing him in Infinity War 1 and 2, as well as Spider-Man Homecoming. We don't know the extent of his role in Homecoming yet, but from what I've heard, it should be a decent chunk of the screen time.
That is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so, because I find it interesting because, Tony Stark can be gone, right? Cap can be gone. Again, another Cap, but still, that Cap will be gone. Thor could be gone. I don't know what they'll do to replace him. Maybe try to turn Loki good, as it's happened in the comics recently.
They could also try, because I've heard rumors that Beta Ray Bill may be appearing in Ragnarok as well. So if anything, they could have a successor in him, or Thunderstrike as well, if they want to go that route.
I would love the amount of why the long face jokes. So Anthony, one more thing before we go. How do you feel about the difference between the Civil War comic book and the Civil War movie? Is it a bit jarring to you, or?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's jarring. I was actually really worried a bit when they had announced Civil War was going to be the new Captain America movie. Because having read the comics, it's bar none my favorite Marvel event, like in the history of Marvel events. So I really wanted to see it done well, and I knew they wouldn't be able to do it dead on to the comic, considering the character limitations they have. So what they actually ended up doing, like taking bits and pieces of Civil War, but kind of transforming it into a new story in a way all its own, I thought they did a great job with what they had.
Yes, I definitely enjoyed it as well. However, of course, there are a few scenes, like I mentioned earlier, that I think I would have liked to see adapted. So I'm a little sad that, we'll never really get that, because I assume now that it's, a big movie now, there's no way they would ever adapt it in any other way. Because, it's like they're not going to just do... I mean, it's funny, because we do have... I haven't read it yet, but I know that there's a Civil War Part 2 comic, right? It's the Civil War 2. So I guess, in theory, they can do another one in the movie universe, but I really hope that they don't.
Same here.
Yeah. So, even though it's funny, because if it does happen, I assume it would basically be Infinity War times 10. It'd be Giant Man in Infinity War. Because if they did it again, they would do it 10 years down the line, and if everyone's still around, like, hopefully, like, alive and well, you would have a huge team.
Oh, definitely.
That would be a real Civil War. But yeah, so, yeah, I mean, I do like it compared to the comics, but of course the comics always has a special place in my heart. And we've talked about some animated films, mostly DC, where the comic can be better, but also even the animated special could work a bit better, right?
Absolutely.
In this case, definitely the comic stands alone. But so we're gonna wrap things up. Anything you want to say before we finish up?
Not really. As far as recommending this movie, I give it a really high recommendation.
Oh yeah, I've told some people, see Batman v Superman before condemning it, because I know a person who all she's heard is bad reviews, and she's like, oh, I can't see Batman v Superman. I'm like, you should see it before you destroy it, exactly. Verbally. But with this one, I think it doesn't matter if like you want to say it's bad or not. Just go see it. It's really, really good. At least in my opinion, it's some of Marvel Cinematic Universe's best work. And I think, even while watching it with me in the theater, you thought that it was number one out of everything they've done.
Oh, absolutely. Like, prior to this, Winter Soldier held the top spot.
Mm-hmm.
And while I'm in no way saying Winter Soldier was any less of a good film,
Mm.
I suppose I'd say these two are tied for first, with
Okay.
this one edging it out just a bit.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny too because I said I don't know if it's first compared to Winter Soldier, and you were like, "Man," it's like, "Listen, man." But yeah, so we're gonna wrap things up. I want to thank you all for listening in. Gonna mention our merchandise, of course, being cafepress.com/TGOTR merchandise and screened SKREENED.com/TGP merchandise. Both are places where you can get merchandise for the podcast that you're listening to right now. Right, and our Let's Plays, which are on our YouTube channel, Those Guys Play. Our podcasts, speaking of them being on YouTube, are also on our YouTube channel, Those Guys on the Radio. And we also have a TG Productions YouTube channel where you can see our our show TG News, which is a nerd news show where we tell what I consider funny and jokes, and even some movie reviews, quote unquote. Anthony, I've had you on, and yeah, we'll release some of those episodes soon. Also, we are also on iTunes. So you search up Those Guys or Those Guys on the Radio, you'll find us there. Our website is thoseguysontheradio.tumblr.com. Our Facebook is /ThoseGuysRadio. Our Instagram is also /ThoseGuysRadio, and our Twitter is @ThoseGuysRadio. So I think we're done. Want to thank you all for listening in, and yeah, just hashtag better than Batfleck.
Jesus Christ.
Well, it's better than hashtag better than Pa Kent. Unless you want to come up with something better. Would you?
No, let's leave it at that.
Alright, fair enough. Thank you all, and have a good night.
Have a good